Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to another edition of AIQRATE Webinar Specials, the CXO series. Today, the topic is HR transformation and future of work, strategic perspectives. And to discuss on this, we have with us Puja Kapoor, Global Head Human Resources at OLX Group, India. Samir Dhanrajani, CEO and co-founder at AIQRATE Advisory and Consulting, will be moderating this session. Before we start the session, couple of housekeeping rules. Request all to be on mute for better listening experience. Use the chat window for sharing your questions for Q&A. We are recording this webinar, and this recorded webinar will be made available on our website www.aiqrate.ai and also on our YouTube channel. Now introducing today's guest. Puja Kapoor is the Head of Human Resources at OLX Group India region. At OLX, she leads the mandate for people around diversity, inclusion, and employee engagement. Puja is an accomplished business leader with over 19 years of experience in the HR domain, having served in various leadership roles across companies such as Sapient, Google, dunnhumby, and EvalueServe. Puja has been the recipient of numerous accolades, including being recognized as one of the 50 most influential HR tech leaders 2015 by the Asia Pacific HRM Congress. She was conferred the Women Achiever Leadership Award in 2016 by HRD Congress. Puja, thanks for joining us in our CXO webinar series today. We'll now hand over the session to Samir. Samir, over to you.
Thanks, NK, for the introductions. And Puja, it's a pleasure to have you at CXO Series Specials. And I think the theme per se is very topical, apt, and I would say relevant. As I say, there's a lot happening in the space of talent, how we are trying to look at this aspect of the transformation, given a lot of organizations are facing headwinds. But there lies the opportunity in terms of really getting this business back to, I would say, the core, and also with the opportunities of businesses getting back to the core. Talent is of extreme, I would say, crucial to every organization, I would say, and in terms of how they need to grow. And what we would like to do in the next 60 minutes, we'll try to take a lot of nuggets of experience, your own kind of, let's say, scenarios and perspectives around how this whole transformation within HR, coupled with future of work, has really changed the whole paradigm in terms of what I call the future of work. So just to get the ball rolling, I think more apt, it's about this pandemic. We've been hit hard last 5-6 months. Every business plan has gone, I would say, in a very different shape altogether, not on the right side. Having said that, some scenarios about how today talent needs to be managed, talent needs to be performing, talent needs to be acquired, have seemingly seen some best practices coming in just like 5-6 months. And there's a lot in terms of how HR and the CHROs are looking at really building a new set of playbook, if I may, in terms of saying, look, this is how the talent needs to be managed, acquired, and kind of the whole value chain needs to be kind of, let's say, regenerated. What's your thought around this entire, what I call the new business value chain within HR? How much of that is happening in terms of technology infusion? How much of that is like change because of this pandemic? And what seemingly some prominent features or I would say areas you believe are really going for a transformation from HR point of view?
Well, thanks, Samir. First comes first. Thank you so much for inviting me to this forum. And it's always a pleasure to be interacting with you. Although, the last one had been through the NASCOM forum, but this one is far more up close and virtual though. So thank you very much. So to kind of put some things in perspective, and I think it's surprisingly so, I also feel that the transformation of HR has been very closely parallelly running along with my career as well. Let's say When I started off in 2001 till now, how has the journey of HR also changed and remarkably improved since then? However, there are pockets. So there is still a maturity curve to be hit from an HR standpoint. So when I started in 2001, we used to still do PeopleSoft and make use of data from HRIS. And until today, we continue to do a lot of stuff that needs to be done through either a data lake or a single source of truth. So eventually, I think the journey that is transforming from HR is being from more a support ecosystem to an execution ecosystem to now being a driver ecosystem in the business. And when I say that sitting in the front seat and being the driver of an ecosystem, that's also because HR has learned the maturity of usage of data, and it has understood how you leverage that for business outcomes, business decisions, and then moving forward in the journey. And specifically, like you said, during this pandemic, and I hope everyone's keeping well, but in this pandemic, it's been really a very fast-moving journey for HR. And one quote that really hits my mind is the one that I read somewhere where it said, Lenin said that, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. So it almost feels that in HR, in weeks we have caught up to a lot of stuff because we just had to. We just didn't have an option to do a lot of stuff. So I think during the pandemic, I think the change has been a quick on the mindset, leadership's acceptability on remote working, leadership's acceptability on fluctuating productivity, and its acceptability on changing the terms of reality of workforce planning and result orientation, and understanding how this all can really shape up in the future. And specifically, there are organizations that were in the phase of just reporting and analytics from an HR standpoint, to now 40% organizations going and making decisions based on predictive analytics. So there is this journey that has got achieved, and for a large variety of organizations, the definition of HR has I think changed. For largely IT organizations, it has largely to do with infrastructure move. The content of work or people's productivity doesn't really drop as much, but yes, culturally, how you ensure that performances are maintained, or culturally, how you ensure that people get the space to operate, because everyone's still on the system. But I think the bigger challenge is, let's say for the retail sector, or the sector that has to have some population that is feet on ground, right? Mm-hmm. That is the one that has got severely affected. And in those places, while there is a lot of data to take decision, I think there is a lot of sort of empathy that has got infused in the organization to be able to understand employee well-being, and then use data for employee well-being as well. What is the mood in the organization? How are people feeling? Are they feeling stressed? Do we need to do mental health sessions? Do we need to give people the space for work-life integration, and so on and so forth? So I guess HR has seen a paradigm shift in the way of working. But I also see that these 5 months has given HR a very, very strong voice on the table. It's not only a seat on the table, but it's a voice on the table that helps business take far more meaningful decisions, keeping people at the center of decision making.
So I think I think you rightly said about some of these strategic aspects, Puja, which are of immense, I would say, relevance per se to our theme, specifically on this whole remote work management, the productivity, and also in terms of the employee well-being. And I want to take some of these pieces in detail later part of our session. But seemingly one of the area I want to just add and rather take your views would be as a chief of HR and being very pivotal in terms of working on the talent strategies. I mean, there was a plan which you used to work in the past in terms of how the whole facets of HR functions will operate under your portfolio. And I'm also trying to link, I'm sure you talk to your fraternity, you talk to your, I would say, friends who are on the HR side. Seemingly today, all these strategies around HR have changed. As you rightly said that, and I'm glad to know, in fact, that you've used word like data lakes, and I know that a lot of that is coming from the experience you had with Dhanrajani, but it's very, I would say, off when what I say that some of these discussions usually don't have that technology infusion. But if we look from a CHRO perspective today, and from here, I want to say that, okay, next 6 months, we also know we'll have a challenge in terms of things still being very, I would say, not visible in terms of a clear view of running the business smoothly, to the aspect whether this will continue for long. Now, as you see this entire scenario 6 months, 12 months from now, what do you think in terms of the whole new business plan for CHROs? What will be the some of the areas from a transformative point of view which will emerge? And some of these areas may become best practice, but what is that you see in the next 6 to 12 months from a HR strategy point of view, please?
So maybe I'm still in that journey of evolving the HR strategy. We're still getting there in terms of that understanding. But I would say there are 2 or 3 things that have become very high priority for us within HR as a leader for the business. One is on efficiency and automation within HR and with the business, because this really will help us ensure that we're conserving our energy to do more for the future in the organization. So whether it means that we did a lot of manual effort for a lot of stuff, and also I think one of the challenges that HR also faces is that we house one system, whichever ERP system it is, which are like the top big 5 or 6 ERP systems that we get. They almost become like one of our biggest strengths, but also the roadblocks, because the world keeps evolving with new technologies. For example, hiring. For example, candidate mining. Or for example, there are various other tools that help us in candidate evaluation process before we can to reduce the bandwidth spent on interviewing process and things like that. So I think what is absolutely important is how do we make our systems and processes very efficient and very opportunistic time, so that we're able to future-proof the organization to think better on the skills that we need for the future. So I think that's one thing that is definitely important. The second one that is really going to make a big shift of mindset is on remote working and benefit ecosystem. So while remote working may not, I'm one of those people who still thinks that after having worked for 5 months and had run 3 well-being surveys, I feel that people are bubbling to come back to office. This remote working, which feels like it's a norm, it's here to stay. I think conceptually, it is a good thing that now people are comfortable with remote working. Like, it's not a taboo anymore that someone has to work from home. So I think that's a good mindset shift that has happened. But balancing many things, which is how do you balance remote working productivity? How do you balance your real estate? How do you balance your benefit ecosystem that helps people feel rewarded, not only for being present in the office, but also for giving a lot of their work-life integration up in the name of working from home, right? So all of those things in combination are our second priority, to be able to understand how we will evolve that ecosystem. And we will give a proper space for working from home opportunities. We'll have a proper space for collaboration days at, and common engagement forums within a location like an office, and how we will ensure that people are well supported with benefits. The third thing that will definitely become very important is performance management. Because at the end of the day, the outcome is to show growth. There has to be a growth mindset, and there has to be a bottom line that you have to work towards, right, in an organization. So financials are definitely important at the end of the day. But what are the means to get there? So I think that will become the third most important priority as to how do we reimagine the performance frameworks. You know, whether an evaluation framework needs to be a continuous journey, or the targets need to be changed given the change of society now dealing with each other. If social distancing is an important one, then how does a client meeting really work? How many client meetings can you do in a day? You know, some can do more client meetings in a day, but some may not be able to do because of their physical usage of space and stuff like that. So that will definitely go through a transformation and change, and it will be reimagined, is how I see it. Frameworks largely may remain the same, but you know, how we arrive at targets, what do we look at targets, how do we readjust targets to changing environmental pace, is going to become very important. And what I also think is a fourth, which is one of the most important ones, is leadership communication and leadership growth. So that becomes, you know, with changing environment, everyone's not a star and everyone's not a champion. We all are in it together. You know, COVID was not a situation that we were, you know, HR was a champion in. But fortunately or unfortunately, you know, HR did have slightly more edge on its empathy quotient and on its well-being quotient and stuff like that, because we were always in the space of people advocacy. And therefore, our leadership strength in that space was higher, and therefore HR jumped into that and said, let's support leaders in managing the business right now. You know, how are we going to ensure employee safety? How are we going to ensure employee well-being and yet ensure that the business continuity is at pace? So, you know, that really changed the way in which we're managing the business, and leadership needs to go through, you know, let's say crisis management 101, and then keep moving and be coached on different elements. And empathy becomes a very big element of leadership communication. Last but not the least, in my head, which is the fifth one that I think, is employee experience journeys. They will have a sort of a shift. You know, and probably that data will tell us that in an employee's experience journey, you know, goes through different sort of milestones and motivations in the organization. And with the changing environment, with the change of pace of technology, with the change of pace of human touch and human element, you know, what that experience journey is going to look like, and how we're, as an HR team, will be able to support, sort of help foster that employee journey and bring in more satisfaction, or bring in high NPS in that space. So that's something that I personally feel will be the areas of focus for CHRO.
Sure. Now, I think if I just summarize what you said, it's almost that 5-point based, easy to refer HR transformation playbook seems to be very relevant what you alluded, because some of these facets and insights, what you touched upon, weren't practiced before. I mean, they were not there in the past, and some of these seemingly will continue to stay. And you have a very right message, which you rightly said in the beginning, that look here, at some level, work from home is a reality, but there is an also aspect where the talent wants to come in and really say, look, we also need a physical space at some level to interact, network, and really kind of have meetings in person. And the complete experience of the employee in terms of going for this transformative exercise is something what you rightly mentioned. There's one facet, Puja, I want to touch, which is linked to our future of work. Now, the fact is that, I mean, still today, many of us associate professionals with the number of the quantum in terms of the experience. I mean, often it's said that, okay, 10, 15, 20 years is something which is good, and anything as like 0 to 3, 5, 10 years is like, okay, the professional is still building. But on the other side, we have today Gen Z, millennials, gig workers coming into the workforce, into the organizations a lot. And seemingly, they have a very different way in terms of how they manage and see their careers. And I'm sure you being looking from this as at a very close level, have also seen that look at some level, there is a bit of what I call a conflict where on one side you have the experienced set of professionals, on the other side you have the Gen Z, millennials, and gig workers who have a very different aspect of working today. Now, more generically, I want to ask, how do you see this particular conflict, this whole kind of a, let's say, aspect of how we look at the workforce composition, and seemingly within that realms of future work, how this will evolve in the time to come?
Okay, that's a tough one, because I think we're all in that same zone, or dealing in that same space right now. Having said that, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, Samir, I've definitely seen a shift of mindset of leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders are more open to hire for skill-based talent and relevant skill-based talent. And then hiring belongs to the position. It doesn't belong to the person, or it is not dependent on the person. You can have a 4-year experienced person who's extremely great with machine learning, and comes into a role and performs outstandingly. And then you need to also balance it out with maturity of leadership. So that leader may not be a person who's an expert on machine learning, but has a good handle over machine learning understanding, has done that somewhere in their career. But today's machine learning may be slightly different, maybe far more advanced and evolved in terms of technological skill sets. So there has to be this balance of maturity and agility that needs to come into the picture. And therefore, I think more often than not, the focus is to hire people who have an expertise, but bring in learnability and attitude to the picture, who get hired, right? And I have seen that as an open space lately. For example, my CEO at OLX started off as a data scientist, became a chief revenue strategy officer, and is the GM of the company today, and is also managing product and tech, right? Now, that's a journey of learnability. It's a journey of a person who was in a very specialized skill set, and now is able to manage a wide variety of audience as well, right? So teams are now built with that sort of a balance. And that's the job of the HR business partner, to be able to help coach the leaders when a hiring need really comes up, or a business need. Rather, before a hiring need, it's solving for the business problem, and then understanding what skill sets you really need to solve that business problem, and then trying to decide, at what levels and positions do people get hired, so that you're able to solving. So if you're solving for only technical issues, then you need absolute experts. But if you're solving for setting up a team for the long haul, then you need to ensure that you're building a mix of a team that has the maturity to handle chaos, handle long-term thinking, and has the agility to work on new projects and technologies at the same time. So my one would be that the current workforce is largely millennial, I understand, but there is a workforce that I don't call millennials, but I feel that there is a workforce that is specialized, yes, yet very agile, and has a high learnability quotient. And that's what the organization really looks for.
I think this is awesome what you said, because I pick up two aspects which are very relevant, specific to this question: the learnability aspect and attitude to perform, because seemingly that's agnostic in terms of whether you bring experience or not, or whether you have a certain credentials or a degree or not, but more important in terms of being more sense and purpose driven in terms of performance for that particular organization. Having said that, Pooja, it's also related to my next question. Now, I'm also trying to lean in terms of your current portfolio, which is not only specific to India, but handling multiple geographies. Culture today has become rather the most talked about piece in HR side, because seemingly it was earlier very easy to kind of decipher. You meet the folks, you do a kind of a town hall or a kind of a skip kind of a meeting, you get to know what the culture is all about. That's gone. Virtually, I can fake my emotions. I can just put myself on mute, or let's say with the camera kind of a, let's say, not being visible. And seemingly, the HR fraternity is saying that, look, yes, we still would like to see how the culture element is there for the organization, because culture is embedded, it's ingrained, and it has a dire impact in terms of the performance of the organization. Now, I want to take your view, not specific, I think, to India per se, but maybe a global view about this whole aspect of culture, what was pre-COVID, and culture, which is, I would say, during and post-COVID. How do you see from an HR relevance point of view, this whole culture aspect of the organization getting to the next level, or getting into a new kind of a, let's say, paradigm from a thinking perspective?
Well, I think for OLX, that topic is so hot and so close to our topic that it is not a function or a product of change from pre-COVID to post-COVID. It's always been a very, very close topic of our close to our leadership's core focus. So we've always talked about a culture that is open, empowering, trust is embedded, and inclusivity is paramount. So when we talk about these four elements within the OLX culture, or rather I would say this was very differently positioned, let's say in Dunham. It was positioned as passion, curiosity, courage, and openness. So if you had those sorts of values that you followed in the organization, your DNA largely is to be open, transparent, and empowering in nature. So at OLX, the last 2 years, what we have focused on is building a very inclusive and a diverse culture. And for me, the learning has also been of handling 12 different countries. Is the culture of Latin America, the culture of Berlin, or the culture of India and Indonesia is extremely different. But
Right.
the common thread that binds the entire population of all these countries is the common language of OLX. What is that common language? The common language of OLX is dignity at workplace. We give everybody the space and openness to operate and empower people to take decisions. We're non-hierarchical and we include everybody in our work culture. And if you're able to follow that, then pretty much things fall in place. So even virtually, inclusivity has only got accelerated for us, because now we know that, oh God, we're now virtual. So to make everybody inclusive, I need to stop speaking too much one-sidedly, but have everyone's, points really heard. So Zoom or WebEx or whatever medium you use, you need to give people an opportunity to speak up, right? And call out people to speak up. So there are ways in which you will make things inclusive in an organization. So empathy and inclusivity have actually got accelerated in the organization, I would say, post the COVID hitting the world. And that has become like one of our strengths, including the fact that we have dialed up on leadership communication. We have probably tried every sort of medium of leadership communication. There is email, there is video, there is interactive video communication, there is intranet video communication. We have done webinar communications, and we have done a lot of small room communications as well. So at the same time, what we have done is we have heightened focus on communication, because virtual literally means that you have to manage a lot of distributed teams. And recently, what I said is that the long-term future of work will be that leaders will be managing workforces. They are not going to say that they're only managing teams, they're managing work and they're managing forces coming together to deliver. And therefore, respecting everyone's work-life space becomes extremely important. Giving people time away from screen becomes very important. Giving people the space for mental well-being, and Infusing a lot of fun and engagement itself in work becomes very important, because that itself tells you what your culture is. I was talking in one of the sessions, and things that we did at OLX is, besides doing all of these things that heightened the focus on leadership communication, empathy, inclusivity, we created a lot of engagement forums, and also sort of fun engagement forums where people created memes of working from home versus what my boss is expecting me to do. So there's someone sleeping and clicking a picture and saying my boss is expecting that I'm actually working, but I'm sleeping and listening to my boss on the phone. But that's an open culture, right? You're able to talk about these things because you believe that you're operating in a team of trust, and so your ownership of delivering your work is paramount. How you deliver, in what time you deliver, you just have to ensure that it's delivered on time. No one's going to double down on you or micromanage your screen time, right? So there are lots of smaller aspects that have got infused to build the post-COVID culture of inclusivity that probably helps, create more belongingness. And there is an HBR study that says that with all of these aspects that I spoke, if we infuse the feeling of belongingness in an organization, we actually increase performance by 56%, and we reduce sick days by approximately 75% in the organization.
Wow. This is
if we're able to do that, then that is a stat that we should actually aspire to achieve.
This is fascinating. I think the whole response wherein you touched upon these subtleties and nuances of how seemingly some of the small areas become part of the larger ecosystem of culture is very fascinating, because I think sometimes we take culture from a phrase where it's larger than life, but it's not. It's like those small elements and experience, and everyone speaking, or rather kind of thinking about a common purpose language, becomes, like, I would say, an ingrained culture. So very well said, Pooja. But at the same time, I want to touch upon one aspect which cannot be taken out with culture, is this whole diversity and inclusion. I think of late we all realize that this has become a very meaningful way to kind of really say that, look, I'm an organization which not only thinks but executes on the D&I side. Having said that, majority of the organizations today, I mean, be it the new age or even the traditional ones, have a challenge really upping the ante on the D&I. I mean, with all due regards, some of the organizations haven't really put that as a strategic element of their, I would say, businesses. Some of them are not able to hire the right talent over there, and some of them really are not able to really make them stick in terms of the really larger picture within the organization. What do you think should be done? Because this seemingly in the time to come could even mar the prospects of a company, because we are missing a one large segment which needs what I call an equal set of opportunities, an equal set of, I would say, things on the table. What's your view on this?
Well, I think for me, the first thing first is that if diversity and inclusion has to be embedded, it has to be embedded in the normal work life of an organization. And it is absolutely important for the success of an organization. And data says that organizations that really do well on building an inclusive culture and ensures that it has a great gender balance or a diverse workforce has approximately 27% better profitable results in the world. Now,
27%.
and that's just not a number. It actually means that there is a laundry list of actions that you need to ensure that you need to make a part of your day job if you really want that to happen and if you want high performing teams in an organization. So it
But if
starts
I
from the
may chime,
boardroom.
Pooja, help us understand in a generic view, what are the challenges which organizations are facing in terms of this D&I inclusion as part of their strategy? I think let's start with that, and then maybe we'll take your views in terms of what should be done.
Yes. And absolutely right. I think what I was trying to say is more from a positive lens of what challenges we've been trying to mitigate. But if we really have to call out challenges, the first challenge is that to have a mindset agreement in the boardroom that this is an important topic for the organization. The second challenge that typically you need to mitigate in the organization is that when the board agrees, or in the leadership group, there is an agreement that this is an important topic that will foster the growth and profitability of the organization, that it needs to feature somewhere in your goals so that you're able to evaluate the progress of the work that you do in that space. When we say that I want to grow the cars autos business to X% to Y%, right? I put that in my goals. But if you want to say that diversity and inclusion should contribute to the success of my organization, then I need to put a metric in there as to what engagement has that brought in my organization, how it has helped me become more profitable. I need to quantify that, and I need to measure that, and I need to put that in my goals, right? So, and that's where data becomes very important. And so we need to have the right sets of data to be able to take the right sets of decision, to be able to put the right goals for leaders. And then that those goals penetrate through the organization, and everyone picks an element of that goal and contributes to the shared goal or the shared vision of the organization, that diversity and inclusion is here to stay and will become a part of our culture. Now, if I correlate it with OLX today, because I've been a passionate member of the D&I Council of OLX, and I've been there for the last 2 years. We started off first by agreeing at the global level that this was an important topic. We put that in leadership goals, but we also created a D&I Council in the company that was, that had a wide variety of representatives, one from India, one from Berlin, one from LATAM, legal, finance, HR, almost a cross-section of representatives, product, tech, and data representation. And that group then operated as the ambassador, or as the fuel to the agenda of D&I. We created subcommittees, and we had an aim to ensure that we first educate people on the topic, we engage people on the topic, and then we start showing results on several different elements of the topic. It could be gender balance, it could be disability, it could be just purely engaging people on harassment and safety in the organization. And a lot of those elements become very, very important. And then you measure yourself on your surveys, wherein those questions are very clearly asked and people respond on those questions and give you a metric back that tell you how are you faring on those topics. So D&I really is an extremely important topic for an organization, and can scale a lot of the engagement. For us, we believe inclusivity infuses belongingness, and we are very gung-ho that because of belongingness, we will be able to impact our performances. And that's exactly what we have seen in our product and tech data team. We've infused 10% more women. I'm not allowed to disclose the number, but I can tell you that we have increased the number of women pipeline in the product and tech data teams. And that way, we've created an environment of innovative thinking. If women are the largest users of an OLX app and decision making is made by women, how come women are not a part of designing the app? Right? How come women are not a part of creating the app's ecosystem that helps women navigate better and builds more trust with the consumer, builds more engagement with the consumer, right? So trust and safety became a very big element from a product standpoint. And if you infuse diverse talent, if you bring in inclusivity, you have better ideas. And that's one of the reasons that unknowingly, OLX, so NASPERS did a study. NASPERS is our holding company. And NASPERS did a study across India. I can't name other companies, but out of around 20 companies, 20 apps that we studied, OLX was one of the top apps that could be easily accessed by vision impaired people. We did not know that, but because we had hired the right talent, we used all the web content accessibility guidelines. We probably just got that piece right because we were following the right guidelines. We were all doing the right things, and we were not cutting corners to be able to create an app. Right. So a lot of this really depends on the kind of talent you hire. You infuse diverse talent, and you infuse talent that is directly correlated to your customer. Now think about it, that OLX has a very huge customer base that it can tap, even of people who are vision impaired, which we ever may have not thought of from that lens. And this is all possible because if you have a diverse and inclusive culture, and you really think about who's your end consumer and how is your product related to the usage of your end consumer. So there is a very strong correlation between your culture, inclusivity, diverse talent with the direct outcome of the product you bring to the market. And
Wonderful.
that's something that we discovered over a period of time.
Wonderful. I pick up the thing what you rightly said, inclusivity uh, rather breeds or infuses belongingness, because that's the key over there, because at some level, this is an element which cannot be missed and cannot be negated away in terms of saying, okay, we'll do it. I think it has to be part of a rallying cry for the organization. Very well said, Pooja. At the same time, I want to just pick up a question which has come in on the culture side and maybe take that as a part of our I would say interaction. While what you said is more specific, new age, specifically technology-led companies or companies which have a forward view in terms of how it needs to be managed. The question is more about traditional companies are really struggling to get their culture and the mindset about what they need to really think about from here on in terms of the future of work perspective is uh, seemingly there is a struggle over there going on. The struggle gets more, I would say, pronounced because on one side you have those traditional companies, on the other side you have born digital or born kind of AI companies. What, in your views, Pooja, should be done to get these traditional companies really looking at a culture, with a culture lens and saying, look, this is the way it needs to be solved. And this is like, these are the 3, 4 things they should be saying, doing rather, and saying, look, this is what our new culture or our new approach of managing with a new culture should be within the organization.
Well, I don't know if I have a recipe for that, Samir, but what I can definitely say is when you need to infuse a change in culture, sometimes it is like the fish thinks from the top. The culture change is walk the talk. It has to start with the leadership group. It seldom is successful. I've not seen organizations that have changed culture with a very, very bottoms up approach. I've seen that there is a balance that first it starts from the top and then a bottoms up approach is infused to create more involvement. And then the cultural change gets manifested in the organization. But for traditional organizations, and my experience has been of working with a couple, the first and foremost one is leadership mindset and the ability of the leaders to be comfortable with intellectual growth. And when I say intellectual growth, what I mean is that leadership should not be worried about intellectual insecurity. That what if this new generation comes and takes over what I'm doing today, right? And I think sometimes, the leadership becomes the biggest bottleneck of the growth of the organization without looking into the mirror. So the leadership mindset change is the biggest one. If that can be infused, then things become far easier. Second is that if the leadership is bought into the journey that there is a change and we are going to make that change, we will walk the talk, then you need to have like an engine created to be able to pull that change into the culture. And so you definitely need change culture ambassadors. How do you pick them? Who are your most passionate people? Then you need to pick and choose them very, very thoughtfully, just so that you use them through a program management group and you ensure that they are embedded in different parts of the organization and can infuse inspirational modeling of culture change and can rally the troops around for a culture change. And last but not the least is once the culture starts to take some speed, this is like a clear drill that one should follow, that engagement into that culture involving the bottoms up approach to decide how to manifest that culture becomes very important. So then engaging the audience into that journey becomes very important. So you definitely need to ensure that you're putting resources behind that agenda. It's not a side 5% of a current day job. It is a specific focus. So you will have to rally some resources around it. And you will have to ensure that you show it through the seriousness of the agenda, that, we will make this change together. And then, there will have to be a chronological way of doing it. Usually, structure is the most, I would say, loathed or hated aspect in the new age companies, but it is the most loved aspect in traditional companies. Right. And so if we could use structure to infuse change, I think that can really work. And that's a bit of my experience as well.
Super. I think this is something very, very true what you said. Having said that, one facet I cannot miss talking to you would be on this artificial intelligence and data science. And I can see that in your entire narrative over the last 45 minutes, you've used words which usually the practitioners of AI use: data lakes, data science, modeling, and all. And let me kind of now really get into that mode of really asking you on this. Under this future of work, specifically HR transformation, cannot do away with the sophistication of leveraging artificial intelligence, because essentially it's about driving insights and making HR function as a very strong, I would say, factory of taking decisions through the data. Having said that, if we take some of these reports from a adoption of AI perspective, HR still lags amongst many other functions who are still having a kind of an upper edge on this. Today, and as you rightly said, the acceleration in terms of infusing new age technology needs to happen. Now, whether it's about resume filtering or sifting, to really kind of getting those videos where you're trying to analyze a prospect in terms of the visual kind of, let's say, views, or understanding his or her tone in terms of the voice kind of thing, to really looking at infusing AI with behavioral science on coming out with the ethnographic profiling of an individual to see the fitment on the culture or the side of the organization, whether he or she fits in or not, to the aspect of really saying, okay, even the comp and win piece needs to be managed by AI. To what extent do you think this is being done in terms of really leveraging AI and other exponential technologies within HR? And do you see any pitfalls or, again, any challenges? And this is more generic, I know, because OLX is, of course, at the frontier of this, and the right manifestation, as you said, that the chief of data scientist became the kind of, let's say, head of the business. So that's a kind of a true manifestation. But where do you think are the challenges are lying? And again, over there, more prescriptive, what should be done to infuse more new age technology into the HR role?
Samir, my experience has been that using AI is absolutely in the forefront. Mm-hmm. But every organization has a maturity curve, and every organization has a volume challenge to use data very effectively. So if I have like volumes of 200, 300, maybe I'm not going to be able to use all of these fancy technologies because their cost may be even higher than what I would otherwise spend, right? So it's a function of scale, need, and quality, and how you can solve some of these problems that actually hinder your organization's growth. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. So I'm probably a proponent of not using AI for the heck of AI. Like it's the new age thing. So let's just use it. But let's see what problem we're trying to solve, mm-hmm. right? Do I really have a problem in the hiring mechanism today? What are my volumes? If my volumes are extremely high, then I definitely need a tool to help reduce the energy of my recruitment team in it, improve the quality of outcome, and reduce the investment of time my interviewers are putting into the process. And have a better throughput ratio, right? But if my volumes are not that high, even if I take like an AI technology, it may be far more expensive than even my agency cost. What's the point of doing that? But there are spaces where AI can really do big right now if you have good volumes in place, and therefore those are the spots where you could really use them effectively. In my world, particularly, the one thing that I tried out or I've been trying out is on engagement bots. And I've used AI in the engagement space versus the hiring space as much, because my hiring volumes are not very critical in the field side, and my hiring volume is not too high in the product data end side, and I have a good team that can do that, and it's managed pretty well for me. But from an engagement side, to reach my last mile talent and ensure that I understand what the pulse, what the mood is on regular basis is becoming a huge challenge for me, because I can't just keep launching a survey every time. And there's a survey fatigue. And then people start to ignore emails after a while. So therefore, I have now experimented with an AI bot that can do, conversational analysis at different milestones of a career or a life cycle or of an employee, and then can keep continuously telling me the mood of the organization. It will throw at me as to, what are your early warning signals of some of your talent that have problems and whose mood in the organizations are also really bad. Some people have great mood, but are reporting issues in the organization. And those are counterintuitive. So you can be extremely passionate to be a part of, let's say, an organization, but you're actually highlighting a big problem that needs to be fixed. And that can, in the long term, reduce your attrition. And reducing attrition is not an HR matrix. For me, reducing attrition is actually contributing back to the productivity of the organization and eventually contributing back to the revenue. Because if I have to lose so many people, then I have pushed out the fully productive talent by 3 to 6 months to be able to generate the right level of revenue in the organization. So that's what I was losing. And using this AI bot has really worked wonders for us. We've actually brought our attrition down by almost 50%. And for it, I will give some credit to COVID for sure, that, it has done a lot of it and people are very, very conscious now. Should we take a decision to move on or not? But I think factually, we have solved some very critical problems in the organization because of that in the last 3 or 4 months, which otherwise would have been dormant.
Awesome.
So that's where AI has really helped. So I think it's each organization. We just need to figure out, what's the right inflection point to use AI in the organization, and we should be aware that here's where AI will actually contribute to the long-term interest of the organization.
Got it. So this particular thing I had kept in the last, but glad that we have a question on this. Puja, is about OLX as an entity, organization, enterprise. Please give us I would say, view about, of course, everyone knows OLX. I mean, the brand is well resonated in terms of top of the mind recall, but I'm sure you would like to give some aspects about what people don't know about OLX and specifically the international operations, the business portfolios, and how OLX is taking this entire, I would say, journey to the next level as an organization.
Awesome. So OLX is a fully owned portfolio company of NASPA's. So we are very lucky, in fact, that we're an organization that operates with a startup's agility, but with a 100-year-old maturity backing of an organization. So we have the sort of balance of the two. As an organization, we originate from Netherlands. It is headquartered at Netherlands. It is spread across 37 countries.
37 countries.
Yes, and currently we operate in Europe, approximately around 9-10 countries in Europe, Middle East, South Africa, Latin America, and Asia. These are places where we operate. The only reason why I think some people are not very clearly aware is because OLX India marketing campaign was so strong that it felt that it was an India startup. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted people to relate to the OLX brand as an Indian brand, which is absolutely right. But we are we were a classifieds company only up until 2 years back. And it started as small classified entities that were acquired over a period of time that now have become the OLX group, the classifieds business across 37 countries. And now we have also acquired the new business operating model of used car transaction model, which is online to offline model in which there is a car that comes to an inspection center, to a physical store, gets inspected, and through that the customer gets an instant cash, and the car is procured by OLX and then auctioned on a dealer-based platform. So essentially, we are also in a used car transaction model, which is the CTX model that we say. And we're also in the jobs blue and gray collar business, which is based out of Bangalore, that we recently acquired, called Asan Jobs, and rebranded as OLX People. In India, we work in 3 different areas: classifieds, Cash My Car, which is OLX Cash My Car instant car transaction model, and OLX People, the jobs business. And globally, we operate in either of these spaces in countries. And what I am really proud of is for the OLX Autos global business unit, which I'm leading today across 12 countries, our hub, the technology hub for all the global rollout of platforms and technology, is housed in India. And I would say we may be the few ones who are building the entire app from India for the globe, which is a multinational. So that's how OLX is structured globally.
Fascinating. I think, this is something, in fact, many of us were not aware. I think glad you actually gave us those insights. In the interest of time, Pooja, I want to take one question, in fact, and something which we haven't touched upon, but again, very pertinent, is about, and maybe it's like a more like a peek into the future. 2-3 years from now, and you could be even taking a punt on this if you feel so. What do you think would be the innovations which will be driving HR, whether it's from a technology, business, or the other facet of the changing environment? And it's more like about the state of HR 2 to 3 years from now.
Well, this has been a topic of discussion of several forums. And to my mind, I think the state of HR definitely changes by being more technologically enabled, a high use of predictive analytics, and change in role focus. For example, the roles will change to strategic business partners. There will be a sort of linkage between the digital programs and the employees to continue to keep a high human touch and not drop the human touch. So there will be unbiased, let's say, human digital workers in between. And there will be a lot of sort of focus on learning to be future ready. So, future ready learning skill leaders will be there in place. And there will be a lot of experiential journey managers who will manage the journey of an employee in an organization. So those are some things that I think that there will be a shift of mindset, that there won't be sort of, these HR generalists as many. The roles will change to strategic management. Technology will definitely take over most of the repeatable aspects. And also with text analytics and such AI bots and things like that, engagement will become a lot more easier. So now then engaging with the purpose of the organization will become HR's role. 4 or 5 roles, I think, that will be at the forefront, that will change the game of the organization, and people analytics will be one of them for sure. But we may have people data scientists for sure, is the way I look at it.
Pooja, we would have loved to continue. As you rightly said, this particular aspect of future of HR is a session in itself, but very engaging, very kind of enthralling kind of discussion. I personally picked up a lot of insights because the way you brought to the focus all these set of new dimensions about HR, future of work, transformation were absolutely very, very, I would say, insightful. Secondly, I think you made it supplemented with the right analogies and anecdotes, which I'm sure our global audience loved it. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And it was a pleasure having you at the forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure was mine, and I hope I've been able to contribute to that.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.